If you proposed a billion-dollar transmission line, could you clearly show how low-income or rural folks or communities of color would benefit, not just bear the costs, but benefit? I'm Carolyn Parrs, communicator, coach, and host of Just Power, a podcast about creating a clean energy future without leaving anyone behind. Join me as we explore the technologies, policies, and human stories that can make clean energy not just sustainable for our planet, but accessible for everyone. Are you ready to answer the affordability and energy equity questions that commissioners are asking utilities right now? Because here's the truth, they're coming faster and harder than most leaders expect. Hi, I'm Carolyn Parrs, and welcome to the Just Power podcast. Today, I'm going to give you these 7 questions you need to answer right now, because across the country, commissioners are asking these same questions about affordability, about accountability, community trust, disconnections, and the just transition. These aren't just sideline notes anymore. They are center stage. And they're not only for commissioners, but investors are asking these questions too. A colleague of mine at a major utility told me that in a recent meeting, a Goldman Sachs executive didn't ask the usual questions about how's your decarbonization plan going, but asked, what are you doing about just transition? No kidding. Okay, so if you're feeling wobbly in that territory, or you need to know where you need to be putting your attention when it comes to energy equity, I am going to help you today. But first, I'm going to ask you to subscribe. Please subscribe to the Just Power podcast. I love it that you listen, and I want you to continue to listen, but you need to hit the subscribe button to keep our energy equity engine running. That helps us so much. So thank you for doing that. Today is the day, all right? All right, here we go. So today I'm going to walk you through 7 questions regulators are already asking their energy providers. And I'm going to share with you some stories, some case studies, and even some actual commissioner quotes that are behind them. And I'm going to give you some reflective prompts so that you can test your own readiness. How does that sound? All right, so grab a notebook, your computer, because by the end of this episode, you're going to know exactly which questions you can answer today and which ones you will sweat under the lights of a commissioner hearing. So here we go. Number 1, what does energy equity and justice mean to your company? I know that sounds so simple, but I'm going to tell you right now, this has happened over and over again, where a utility representative at a hearing is asked that question and they stumble, or it's deer in the headlines. I've heard this firsthand. When there's no clear answer, there's not a good impression for commissioners, for legislators, or even for really concerned community members. You need to know, what does energy equity and justice mean to your company? It can mean different things, right? Different things to different organizations because there's different priorities. So you need to know what that is for your company, because as the energy transition progresses or policies change, these definitions are going to evolve with the emerging concerns that are happening all around us: climate resilience, renewable energy access, technology advancements, data centers, and more. All right, so know the answer to that question. So here's the prompt, the reflective prompt that I'm giving you. What does energy equity and justice mean to your company? And here's a pro tip: make sure it aligns with your affordability strategies. All right? Affordability and equity are sisters. They need to be aligned. All right, number 2. Here's your question. How will your clean energy plans address or even lower energy burdens for low-income customers? How will your energy plans address or even lower your energy burdens for low-income customers? No surprise, energy prices are going up. And as one commissioner said, and I quote, "Half the U.S. households have faced difficulty paying their energy bills in the recent years. We cannot build a clean energy future on a foundation of unaffordable bills." End of quote. All right. So here in Colorado, for an example, affordability concerns have been front and center. The state PUC adopted affordability metrics and explicitly told utilities to demonstrate how new projects would reduce household energy burdens. How new projects would reduce it. All right, so I want you to think about that. Here is your reflective prompt. If you're a utility leader, or you work as an energy provider, or even a buyer, could you answer today how your clean energy plans will lower, not raise, energy burden for low-income customers? Think about that. What is your answer to that? Okay. Let's move on to question number 3. Here we go. What are your disconnection numbers broken down by income, race, or geography, neighborhood? Do you know those? That was an actual question that was asked. Disconnections are the flashpoint where affordability, justice, and corporate reputations collide. Nobody likes them. There's frustration all around, humiliation, and even life-threatening for some. So regulators are under pressure to reduce shutoffs. Okay, as one commissioner said, and I quote, "When people lose power, they lose more than electricity. They lose dignity. They lose health and safety. We must hold our utilities accountable." End of quote. Yeah. So during the pandemic, as an example, many commissions instituted moratoriums on disconnections, right? But when they lifted, the disconnections spiked, which raised questions about whether utilities had sustainable solutions or were they just simply deferring the pain during the COVID times, right? So your reflective prompt here is this. How would your team respond if a commissioner asked for your disconnection numbers? Could you provide them that tomorrow? Do you know those? And it's changing fast. So you have to be on top of that. Know where your people stand. Okay. Here we go. Number 4, right? If you proposed a $1 billion transmission line, could you clearly show how low-income or rural folks or communities of color would benefit, not just bear the costs, but benefit? That's a big question, I know. When it comes to grid modernization, regulators increasingly are asking utilities not just to justify the technical side of it, but the equity side of it. Who pays and who benefits from that? And as one commissioner said, and I quote again, "It's not enough to say the grid needs upgrades. We must ensure that communities historically left behind see real benefits." End of quote. Okay, it is in the mind of hearts of many today, and your commissioners are asking the hard questions. So, for instance, in New York, the CLCPA mandates required utilities to demonstrate benefits to disadvantaged communities in every major filing. Projects without a clear equity benefit risk delay, you know this, delay or denial, and that bleeds cash, right? And hearts along with that. So let's not do that. So here is your reflective prompt. If you proposed a $1 billion transmission line, could you clearly show how low-income, rural folks or communities of color would benefit, not just bear the cost but benefit? Okay. And if the answer is yes, how? If the answer is no, why not? Okay. So go a little further. I know I'm pressing you to go a little further with that, right? But really get granular on it. All right. Number 5. Number 5 is about community engagement. And you know, if you've been listening to Just Power, this is near and dear to my heart, right? I speak on it a lot. And listening to communities, by the way, is what fed from eSource. He said he met with utility leaders recently, and that was the number one thing they said was to listen to your communities. So here's my question to you. Would community leaders describe your engagement as authentic partnership or just checking the box? I know, that's a big one, right? Would community leaders describe your engagement as authentic partnership or just checking the box? So traditional stakeholder engagement, right? A few public hearings, a comment docket, or maybe an occasional town hall will no longer cut it, right? Regulators are hearing loud and clear from very sophisticated voices from communities who are demanding deeper and more authentic involvement, including being part of the decision making. Yes, the decision making as well. And as one commissioner summed it up powerfully, I quote, "If the community hasn't been part of the conversation, then we as regulators have not done our job." It couldn't be any more clear than that, right? End of quote. That clearer than that was my part. So some utilities have begun actually creating what we call community advisory boards, right? With real decision-making power, not just symbolic input. And some even have these listening circles, not just when a rate case rolls around or when they need something from the community, but a continual process and practice with their communities. And for some examples, Minnesota regulators recently required utilities to show how underserved communities were meaningfully engaged before approving resource plans. Right? So this is happening in many places. And I want to give you, if this is interesting to you or community involvement is important to your company, whether you're a buyer or a provider of energy, please check out my show. It was in my second season. It was the 5 questions you should be asking your communities now. They're really meaningful questions for these times. And after you listen to that, go ahead and listen to another show in this season, 8 Ways to Nurture, Not Just Serve Your Communities. There'll be links in the show notes for that, right? And finally, a stellar example of this, of real community involvement and decision-making capacity, came from LA 100, which was the city of LA and NREL when they wanted to create 100% renewable energy in the city, and what they did and are doing now to keep the conversation going. So if you want to listen to a stellar case study, it was in our very first season. I believe over 200 community groups were involved, and they were not just the likely suspects. They brought in many others. So listen to that. Listen to that. I'll put that link in the show notes as well. So here is your reflective prompt. Would community leaders describe your engagement as authentic partnership or just checking the box? And my second part to that would be, how can you up your game to make it a meaningful difference to your community? How can you up your game? Community involvement, so important. All right, coming on to number 6, everybody needs to take a breath. I know these are pretty strong questions, but I know you can do it, right? Number 6 is about measuring and reporting equity. So important, right? So here it is. Do you have a set of energy equity metrics that regulators, communities, and customers can actually see and hold you accountable to, right? So you can't manage what you don't measure, right? And regulators are tired of vague numbers or vague promises. They want clear and transparent equity data. such as energy burden, arrearages, program uptakes, disconnections, and more to track your progress and the progress that's happening in communities. So as one commissioner said, quote, equity cannot remain a talking point. It must become a measurable outcome, end of quote. Okay, so in Illinois, regulators now require an annual affordability and arrearages report from investor-owned utilities with data broken down by customer segment. And that is raising the bar nationally. So here is your reflective point on that. What set of metrics do you have in place that regulators, communities, and customers can see and hold you accountable when it comes to equity outcome? So the metrics behind what you're doing, please, just not on project to project. What I really want to see is it's baked in at the beginning of all filings, at the beginning of all projects, no matter where it is. Last question, number 7, is all about balancing transition costs with justice. So everyone agrees that the clean energy transition will cost trillions. The latest number that I heard is 1.2 trillion, and I'm sure that's going to go up. So the question, who pays and how do they pay, is top of mind for commissioners. So they are openly warning utilities not to deepen the inequities, right? By passing disproportionate costs onto vulnerable households. And that, as we all know, is creeping up to moderate as well. And one commissioner said this, I quote, "The clean energy transition cannot succeed if half the population is left behind. Period." End of quote. So some of the innovative solutions, I want to give you some of that, like what we're seeing on affordable basic service pilots. We're seeing shared solar subscription models and utility co-ownership of renewable energy products that spread those benefits more fairly. These are all great examples of that. And to learn more, make sure you check out my interview with former Colorado PUC Chair Jeff Ackerman. He's working right now on an affordability pricing pilot that is gaining some traction. And that link to that show will also be in the notes. Make sure there's going to be really a lot of good links in there. So make sure you check that out. Another example is in Minnesota. We had on Shuba Harris, who is an equitable energy policy consultant. She worked with Xcel to unveil the nation's first automatic bill credit pilot, right? That eliminates the hurdles. And we know there are so many hurdles with bureaucracy around that have traditionally prevented vulnerable communities and households from actually accessing the support that they need. Okay? So check out that show as well. That is innovation. So here is your reflective prompt. When commissioners are asking, how are you balancing cost recovery with justice? Will your answer be about compliance only or about innovation? Compliance only or about innovation? So there you have it. 7 juicy questions that regulators are already putting on the table right now. These are not regulatory checkboxes. They are leadership questions. They're about building a clean energy future that includes everyone. So I'm going to leave you with this. If a commissioner asked tomorrow, how ready would you be? Not just with words, but with proof. How ready would you be? Be that company that's ready. Be that company that walks the walk, not just talks the talk, right? So that's what I'm calling out today for you. Thank you so much for joining me on Just Power. I hope this was helpful to you. If this conversation sparked something for you, please subscribe once again to our YouTube channel or your favorite podcast platform. And also share this. Share this with a colleague. Maybe share it too with your commissioners so we can keep building a clean energy future that leaves no one behind. Because We are all in this together. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to Just Power wherever you get your podcasts. And if you really loved it, leave us a review and tell everyone you know about our podcast. It's going to take all of us to create a clean energy future that leaves no one behind.